According to Quick Facts, about 1.4 million people go hungry in South Sudan. But what started all this? How did South Sudan get to this terrible state? One big factor is the civil war going on between rebel groups and the government. This has become so much of a humanitarian crisis that the UN needs to get involved.
There's a lot I don't know, but it's certainly what I've read in the news is about there's a South Sudan just recently got their independence from Sudan, and immediately the country broke into like a civil war, and the result of that has been a lot of violence and a lot of people murdered and a tremendous amount of suffering because of that. And it seems like there are two parties that are sort of fighting for control of South Sudan.
The two parties are the rebels and the South Sudanese government.
With the Civil War, I mean, South Sudan is the newest country in the world, and it was created because of a long-standing war, right, in all of Sudan between the South, which is predominantly animist religion, and Black African, and North Sudan is more Arab and Islamic and Muslim. And there was a lot of, when South Sudan was created, there was a lot of hope around it, finally bringing freedom to a group of people that had been under the control of another group of people. There was a lot of optimism, but unfortunately, it hasn't panned out, and South Sudan has fallen into a civil conflict, pretty nasty one, really, that has led to, hunger is one effect of that because of the conflict and the political inability to reach a peaceful settlement at this point. And I don't know exact details about hunger, but it certainly is an effect of their civil conflict. And in many ways, it's really sad. There was so much hope that this could be a successful example of how to end a conflict by creating a new country, and then it hasn't played out for a whole variety of reasons, I think.
I think one of the biggest things is just drawing attention to it. Most people have no idea that this crisis is even going on, and so the fact that people don't know about it makes them obviously not very inclined to help with it. So I think first needs to come awareness, and then after that is you need to get people who are well educated in the intricacies of groups in Africa to try to figure out how to solve the political and military crisis first, and then after that I think the food crisis could be solved. But until there's a peaceful resolution, there will be no way that economic and food aid can be brought into South Sudan.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, your question is an interesting one too, because it raises the follow-up question of who should solve it, whose responsibility is this? But yeah, I think it is something that, one, should be talked quite a bit more about. In my personal opinion, events in Africa are covered and discussed at a much lesser extent, especially in the West, in the United States, and we generally don't pay attention to what's happening in Africa.
I think it needs to be solved, obviously. The biggest problem with it is right now is the United Nations is trying to deal with it and take care of it. The only problem with that is, if you know how the United Nations works, they have to get people to volunteer to do what they're asking, which makes it very complicated. Also, the fact that there's basically a civil war going on means that a lot of countries do not want to get involved. So I don't know exactly how I would solve it. I think it's something that the United Nations needs to continue to work towards solving. I think the biggest problem with that is, again, with the civil war conflict going on, I think you need to solve that first before you can solve the food crisis.
Yeah. South Sudan, they deserve any help that can be given to help them create a stable future. And to be a new country, again, with all that optimism, and have it lapse into a civil war almost right off the bat is unfortunate. So yes, and I think it's a global problem. I think it's an African Union issue, but it's also an issue that involves Western nations who have the means to help out. So I think the United States, the European Union, have a responsibility to do what they can. I think other nations, Japan, China, also have a responsibility to do what they can to help bring about a peaceful solution and help the people of South Sudan. And it certainly does need to be talked about more.
There's been very little economic development, which leads to a lot less food. And so people are literally on the verge of starving to death in South Sudan.
And I think if to truly solve world hunger, you're going to need a combination of a lot of different things. And perhaps the most important is just political will. We as a species, as humans, need to be able to say that we're going to do everything we can to combat this, and we're going to make sure that people have enough food and therefore have sufficient nutrition so that they can develop into healthy adults. So, yeah, it's incredibly complex. I wish I had an answer to it. But it's something that your generation's got to fix, right? I mean, if you can do that, because it hasn't been done yet, but if you can do that,